Some of the most engaging and addictive games I've ever played are the ones where the side quests are vital to the overall experience. Games like Majora's Mask or even Ghost of Tsushima come to mind, but my personal favorite example of this is for sure Xenoblade 3 and the hero quests. The quests are integral to the gameplay and world building, being rewarding not only for the new classes they give you, but also for the extremely thoughtful and touching stories that are told within them. I truly think every hero quest is amazing and definitely worth doing on a first playthrough, but among them all, I find I have such a soft spot for Zeon's quests. With one of the game's main themes being about making scary decisions in order to eventually better yourself, I found Zeon's choice to abandon the life of a soldier and hyperfixate on potato farming instead to be one of the most real, moving, and surprisingly wholesome stories out of them all, even despite its, simplicity. I love you, Zeon, I'll plant as many potatoes as you want. He's by far my favorite hero in the game. And while I know that's just a personal opinion, I really do think the nature of how his quests are set up end up making him extremely likable, while also driving home some of the game's most important messages. And today, I'm going to explain why I love him. Now, typically speaking, you unlock the game's heroes by finding their colony and solving whatever conflict they might be dealing with. Zeon is no exception to this, however, he is the captain of Colony 9, which I believe makes his first quest really intriguing. Partly because the last time you went to Colony 9, they were all trying to kill you, and that was a little weird, I guess. But mainly because it's the Keves Trio's old home. It's where you start the game, as a matter of fact. You can even talk to the soldiers of Colony 9, including Zeon in Chapter 1, before knowing anything about them, which is really cool. Point is, it's not like these are the random soldiers we've been killing on the side of the road for fun. The party has some history with these people, and it feels like the stakes are higher during these quests because of that, and I find it adds more weight to the choices Zeon makes later on in his story. Like I just mentioned, Zeon's first quest follows a similar formula to the others. However, there are some really good moments within it that I think stand out and are worth mentioning. To give a super quick synopsis, you end up returning to Colony 9 and find out very quickly that they still don't like you very much.
You're no friends of mine!
Due to them being affiliated with Noah, Lands, and Uni, the colony's military rank had been demoted, not only causing a huge food shortage among the soldiers, but also resulting in the old commander being kicked out and replaced by Zeon somewhat randomly. To make matters worse for the colony, they get some intel that an enemy platoon is making their way to attack. Zeon, previously being a completely normal soldier, now has to lead the colony out of this brutal situation. And in his desperation, he very reluctantly agrees to let the party help him fight off the enemy soldiers. The quest involves simply marching to intercept the enemy and defeat the enemy platoon with Zeon, while also trying to convince him that you're truly on his side. The quest doesn't exactly finish once you do so, but how you get there and the conversation that happens afterwards is very important. So let's take a second to analyze some of the specifics up until now. Zeon is introduced as a very cold and stern character, attacking the party on sight, refusing to hear what they have to say when they ask to talk, and even making tons of little jabs at them throughout the quest. Because of this, it initially appears to the player that Zeon does not like the main party and only cares about fulfilling his duty as a soldier. Although somewhat understandable given the state of the world, something about his attitude towards the whole situation tends to feel off at the beginning. Partly because this is the series where power of friendship beats everything, but also because the quest slowly shows you Zeon's true colors while still keeping his distant personality in touch.
Listen, I know you've been through all sorts of crap, but you don't know the whole story.
Oh, I'm sure. There is no such thing as a traitor who rebels without cause, be it Keves or Agnes. You've sent many of my comrades off, Noah. Time and time again, you saved the dead, helped survivors, even me. I know you do not make light of people's lives.
So you understand?
I do. But I can never be the friend to you that I once was.
It's moments like this sprinkled throughout the quest that give the player some hope that Zeon isn't this heartless guy who doesn't care about his old friends, but instead that maybe he has no choice to act the way he's acting because of the position that he's in. I find it to be a simple yet tragic story that made me root for Zeon to find a way out of this cycle, much like with Noah and the rest of the party. And the choice to introduce him as a strict and reserved character really contrasts how he's perceived during these conversations, making moments like this surprisingly impactful. I also have to give credit to his voice actor, Neil Newbin here, as you can really hear the sorrow in his voice as he says these lines. With all that in mind, let's go back to where we left off. After you beat the enemy squad, Zeon lets them escape, stating that he doesn't want needless slaughter. This confuses and annoys the enemy captain before he dies, resulting in a very profound conversation between Noah and Zeon.
Let me tell you something. You don't win wars while keeping your hands clean. You're gonna learn that. The hard way. You'll see.
Don't let it get to you.
I wouldn't normally, but in this instance, I'm afraid he struck a chord. I believe I said something similar to you in the past. We were sparring with training swords.
You won in the end.
I did, because you always held back.
That's not true.
You hated the very idea of fighting. That's how it seemed to me. And back then, I thought you'd never survive with that lofty ideal. I was blind. If we don't stand for something greater, strife and conflict will grow ever fiercer. We would end up fighting not for the flame clock, but for our own bloodlust. That is who we are. It was never going to be easy.
Yeah. I'm still trying to figure out what's right myself. But there's something I want to change. And to do that, I have to change myself.
Just to really drive it home, this dialogue lets you see that despite coming across as a harsh commander, Zeon is actually a pretty soft-hearted character who deeply cares for all the people that surround him. He hates the idea of living to fight, even stating that with the way the world works, it's difficult to find a different reason to survive, which clearly scares him. He even gets mocked for thinking this way by the enemy commander, further showing how twisted the views are of the general populace and how it's difficult and intimidating to stand for anything that opposes that. These lines in particular are put here to emphasize the cruelty of this world, and having Noah and the rest of the party share the same sentiments as Zeon and giving him the courage to talk openly about it is comforting, and very important for the climax of this quest. Also, I can't help but love the dynamic between Zeon and the Kevis trio, so it really makes these moments stand out when they begin to understand each other and get along. Get along.
Fuck's sake! Zeon!
You lose yourself to emotion. Some special forces you are.
You shut your trap! What a joke! You don't give a set tree, do you?
I wasn't talking to you, Lance.
I think I'd bake him first myself.
Silence, Lance. You are still being regarded as traitors. Keep in mind that I shall be supervising your every action personally.
Sir, yes sir, Commander, sir.
Do you have to?
One day I'm gonna crack that thick bonce of yours and really see what makes you tick.
Oh yeah. Why are you and Lance always fighting anyway?
He just gets on my nerves.
Sorry, what?
Upon avoiding disaster and returning to the colony, the party is suddenly greeted with Consul B, the head honcho of Colony 9 and the one who Zeon ultimately takes orders from. Now, at this point in the story, we, the player, and the main party know that the consuls are pretty evil. The rest of the soldiers, including Zeon, however, have lived their entire lives seeing them as authority figures, taking every order that they issue. Consul B states that the whole time he was gone and the soldiers were struggling to survive, he was simply watching from the side with the purpose of finding the right moment to kill the traitors. This, along with him mocking the already departed soldiers, really ticks Zeon off, and when Consul B tries to kill the main party, we get a scene that, although somewhat predictable, gave me chills the first time I saw it.
You will give me great pleasure as I crush you. What do you think you're doing?
The words of an idle man who orders others around. Or the words of rebels who risk their lives for us. Which do you think is worth more?
Silence!
The importance of communication is a noteworthy theme throughout these quests, and it's clear that Zeon is very much an actions speak louder than words kind of guy, an ideology that suits his blunt personality. We see it right at the beginning with Zeon's demand that the party proves they're on his side by fighting for the colony, or even when Zeon implies that despite knowing the party had their reasons for rebelling, their intentions don't matter because they still acted on it. In this defining moment, Zeon reciprocates the request he made of the party at the beginning of this story, proving he's on their side by taking a very telling action and confidently standing to protect them, showing a strong mutual respect in his own way. Noah and Zeon even give each other this determined look, as if this was the exact moment they communicated that they would fight against the consul without saying a single word. This sudden gesture also speaks to Zeon's new ideology of prioritizing the safety of innocent life, even if it makes him a traitor and hinders the war efforts, a sentiment that directly contradicts what the consul stand for. It's pretty punk rock, to be honest. This scene is extremely powerful following the doubt that Zeon expressed to the party earlier in the quest, showing that sometimes all it takes is for one person to speak their mind in order to give others the confidence to do the same. Now, with the cartoonishly evil Console B threatening their lives, they have to fight together once again in order to stay alive and give themselves a chance at a new, war-free life. Okay, quick side note, I played this game on hard mode for the first time a couple years ago, and this douchebag was by far the hardest fight in the game for me. Why does he have so much health and so much defense? I'm serious, not even the final boss gave me this much trouble on hard mode. It's a stupid fight, I don't even friggin' care anymore, dude. I was playing on New Game Plus to get this footage, so boom, GG buddy. Anyways, in his final breath, the console threatens Zeon by saying that even though they won this fight, they're still going to live a difficult and torturous life. To which Zeon then proudly exclaims that even if that is the case, at least it's his own decision. Zeon always acts in accordance with his duty, hence the title Dutiful Zeon. However, what that means to him changes drastically throughout these events. Seeing Noah and the rest of them take a stand for what they believe in, despite the struggles that came with that choice, showed Zeon that it is possible for him to decide how he lives. He learns that his duty wasn't necessarily to win the war or whatever, it was to protect the ones close to him, and now he can do it in a way that feels true to his character. In a sense, it's his own war. If I had to sum up the message of this quest, it would be that communicating and being willing to understand the people around you is essential for personal and communal growth, which carries on throughout the story. Being one of the first hero quests in the game that you can come across, it does a great job at introducing the player to how life works for a typical soldier like Leon. Wait, Leon? It really makes you sympathize with his brutal situation, and again, I think introducing him as a former friend makes the moment where he manages to break free just that much more sweet. That being said, many of the other hero quests do evoke similar feelings. That's just how good the game's writing is. But where I find Zeon's story really differentiates itself is in his second quest, or Ascension quest. Foreshadowing what comes next, the last scene of his first quest has Zeon stating he wants to fix the food shortage, and plans to do so by growing crops from scratch. Oh yeah baby, it's farm time. Well, almost. In between quests, there's a series of shorter quests you have to complete first. It's kind of a lot of stuff, so again, here are the quick and important spark notes. Kite, Zeon's second in command, started a pseudo-rebellion, as he believed he would be a better leader than Zeon following the events of the first quest. They eventually figure this out and realize they both just want what's best for the colony, but it makes for an awkward dynamic between Zeon and Kite. They've also tried a couple times to plant crops, but the food always ended up terrible or straight up poisonous, leaving the colony in a bit of a tough spot. Meanwhile, on the other side of the continent, the main party meets Juniper, and the soldiers of Colony Tau, which is located deep in the forest. Because of this, they have an abundance of natural resources, but see basically no war-related confrontation. So they really struggled to keep their flame clock full before the party breaks it and sets them free. Also, this is probably a good time to do a quick spoiler warning for the main game, just in case you haven't played it. Okay, now it's farm time. After many failed attempts at making fields and growing crops, the main party offers to take Zeon to Colony Tau in order to get some farming advice from their commander and fellow hero, Juniper. The two of them have a pretty philosophical discussion about life and potatoes, as Juniper gives some harvesting tips to Zeon. This sets up the entirety of the quest, which involves collecting a bunch of resources from the forest to make the best farm you can through a little bit of trial and error. The main objective here is so vastly different from any of the other quests due to it having a person versus nature type conflict, as opposed to a person versus person conflict. Yes, I have taken 8th grade English class, what about it? Because of this, the quest explores similar messages as the rest of the game through unique and relatively unconventional means. The main thing I want to point out in this first conversation is Zeon mentioning that the way the potatoes grow reminds him of how he and the other soldiers in Ionios live. Saying it out loud, it's a little funny, but this quest does a lot to drive home this symbolism between the potatoes and the soldiers, and it ends up being pretty profound. Although most of the characters have the physical and mental age of young adults, seeing them learn things through what is essentially the eyes of a child is very humanizing, and offers a new perspective on things that maybe we, the player, take for granted. At this point in my life, I probably wouldn't consciously relate to a root vegetable, but of course someone who just learned about death would see a plant wilt away and see themselves within that. I feel as though this scene is here to further showcase Zeon's compassion as a character, but also to set up his relationship with these crops, and how he uses them not only as a means of food, but now also as a tool to express his new view on life. There are tons of examples of this during this quest, but for now, Zeon's comment shows how his overall mentality and focus in the world has shifted from the horrors of fighting and war to his newfound passion for farming. In the middle of the party's discussion with Juniper, Kite shows up with the aim to help. This actually leads to quite the conflict, which we'll get to, but first and most importantly, please stand and remove your hats for the single greatest cutscene in Xenoblade history.
Oh, sorry to keep you. Look here. These will grow even in the harshest. And you are?
Kite! Lieutenant, from Colony 9.
Hello, Kite. I'm Juniper. It's a pleasure to meet you.
Okay, anyways. Despite what that may have implied, the following scene has Kite actually showing a great deal of distrust in Juniper, suggesting that they might be trying to poison the party because he still views the Agnians as enemies. From the players and the party's perspective, this sentiment is clearly insane, showing that Kite is still a little brainwashed from his time as a soldier. Zeon, however, takes a bite of Juniper's potato, while Kite warns him that it might be poisonous. This once again shows off his bluntness as a character, but also shows how he's changed from his first quest, by confidently trusting who he wants to trust and taking a relatively risky action to convey that. The game even makes an effort to show you the shock on everyone's faces when he does this, allowing the significance of this action to linger for a bit. Anyways, Kite is confused and a little upset by this, leading to him storming off, with Juniper suggesting that Zeon should talk to him not as a soldier, but as a friend. After all, if he stops getting treated like a soldier, then he'll stop feeling the need to act like one. This small comment sort of sets up the B-plot of the quest, which has Zeon trying to reconnect with Kite. Finally, Juniper sends Zeon some farming instructions via YouTube Shorts, I think, to which Zeon is very grateful and promises to help them out should they need anything. That's a lot of exposition, but afterwards you finally get to play the game. And this quest is a lot of fun. Okay, fine, I'll address him. This quest is extremely tedious. The amount of fetching and waiting you have to do is a little crazy, even if it does make sense for the story. Like, you have to go to Colony 9 and investigate the farm spots, then go back to the forest to collect Spongy Spuds, go back to the colony, plant the Spuds, wait for it to rain, check on the crops, mess up this batch, go back to the fucking forest to get more potatoes, back to the colony, plant them, wait for the rain more, collect the right materials for the fertilizer, wait for the rain again, no, I'm not making that up, then realize that there's this all-powerful Nopon hiding in the corner that for some reason can make it rain on command if you give him an absurd amount of money, leading to you wanting to die because you didn't actually have to wait the first 2 times! At least the story is really good. Now, I understand that this is a video game, and in this instance, it isn't exactly fun to play, even if it does make sense for the story. But I'm going to be annoying here and make the argument that all this tedious grinding actually explores something that the rest of the hero quests surprisingly don't do too often. This is seriously dumbing it down, but many of the heroes' first quests are typically about freeing different people from the war, so that they can decide how they want to live their lives. The Ascension quests follow up on this and vary greatly between the heroes, each with their own unique conflicts. And while they are all amazing and explore very different scenarios, I feel like this is the only one where you really get to see the difficulties that come with completely changing your lifestyle. It isn't an evil, immortal console coming back to bite them in the ass, or an unrelated problem that kind of comes out of nowhere, but instead a conflict that is a direct result of the character's decision post being freed from their flame clock. In life, when you are faced with a big decision, a lot of the time, simply making your choice is the hardest part. And in storytelling, the lead up and reasoning behind these decisions is where a majority of really good character development comes from. Think Joel in The Last of Us, or even Shulk in Xenoblade 1 with his outlook on the Mechon. I think the main story of 3 does a great job of portraying the difficulty to make a choice by putting the characters in these situations that feel impossible to escape, and then showcasing them being powerful enough to break free and emphasizing their choice to do so. This is so satisfying to watch, and I see it as such a strength of the game. But on the flip side of that, I think the follow through on those decisions is just as important for growth, within a story and in real life. I feel like Zeon's Ascension quest is one of the only instances in the game that really nails this follow through in a realistic manner. And by making the player go through every part of the process, you get to see how the characters react to all the ups and downs that come with such a drastic life change. We get to see the characters make honest mistakes and then do everything in their power to fix it. It causes stress, frustration, sadness, etc., but in the end, they get a result that feeds the people around them, makes everyone happy, and gives them a purpose that doesn't involve taking life. Except these shark guys. They had to die. Having to play through the annoying parts kind of sucks, but it gives the player a greater appreciation for Zeon as a character. It makes him stand out as particularly resolute for having to go through these brand new challenges and not once giving up. It also goes against the ideals of the Mobius by proving that you can succeed during one lifetime, even if you mess up a bunch. It's a very satisfying and grounded story because of this. Now, gameplay aside, the trial and error process that you have to go through has some amazing symbolism, and it's what I consider to be the coolest part of this quest from a writing perspective. Not that I'm much of a writer. Like I pointed out earlier, Zeon and the narrative itself often compares the potatoes to the world's soldiers, and in a sense, they perfectly parallel each other. Much like with how the soldiers in Ionios are constantly dying and being reborn by the hands of the main antagonist, so are these crops by the hands of Zeon and the party. However, the way in which they do this is extremely different and drives home a message of growth and learning from your mistakes. The soldiers are being reborn with minimal resources to thrive, let alone live, unlike the potatoes, which are being taken care of to become as nutritious and healthy as possible. The soldiers get a measly 10 years to live at max, while the party lets the potatoes begin to wilt naturally before harvesting them. And most importantly, the Mobius wipe their soldiers' memories and put them in the exact same scenario time and time again, while ignorantly claiming that it gives them the chance to try again in another life. Unlike the potatoes that change with each of their iterations, thanks to the party using their newfound knowledge to fix any problems that had occurred previously. It's clear that the Spongy Spuds can be viewed as more than just food, and when looked at as a representation of the soldiers, it makes sense as to why Zeon would treat them with such respect. The farm acts as a very powerful response to the violent and cruel world that was set up in the main story and during his first quest, showcasing that life can be lived in both a meaningful and peaceful manner. This of course contradicts the views of the main antagonist, and to give a specific example, have a quick listen to what the enemy commander says in his first quest, and pay attention to what I think is some really intentional word choice.
You're soft, rookie commander. Let me tell you something. You don't win wars while keeping your hands clean. You're gonna learn that the hard way. You'll see.
Obviously, you don't win wars while keeping your hands clean is him saying you can't survive in this world without killing. In his second quest, Zeon does manage to find a way to survive without killing, but still while getting his hands dirty. You know, by farming, tilling the soil, planting potatoes. Okay, I'm gonna level with you here. This is either insanely subtle and well done foreshadowing on the writer's part, or I'm delusional and this is the dumbest shit I've ever said. Regardless, the irony of him strongly disagreeing with the meaning behind this comment and yet still doing what he said in the literal sense is pretty funny, and serves the second quest's overall idea of breaking norms and going against the cruel ways of the world, using these potatoes of course. The antagonists of the game try to manipulate the party by insisting that fighting in the war is the only way to live and keep the world alive. And Zeon finding a way to address this directly in his own way is what I love so much about this quest. They are still fighting to live, not by taking life, but instead by growing it and nurturing it with their own hands, which is beautiful. And when you remember that Zeon sees himself and his friends within these spuds, it makes it all the more endearing seeing how excited he gets about taking care of them. During this little segment, I've been trying to explain that the potatoes are used by Zeon as a means of conveying the change that he would like to see in the world. As he begins to get better with the crops, he starts to talk to his comrades more, making for a cool parallel between the effort given to the fields and the effort put towards treating his friends like people as opposed to soldiers, while simultaneously giving a big FU to the Mobius. The character that gets a lot of benefit from the symbolism is Kite. This one is a little more on the nose, but Kite is very reluctant to trust Zeon, Juniper, and the farm itself. He seems to be stuck in the past the way he doubts Juniper and the way he holds this resentment towards Zeon for relinquishing them all from the war. Much like with Zeon in his first quest, however, Kite slowly shows interest in the farm and in Juniper, with him refusing to help at all right before quest 2, and then being the first to defend the field from monsters by the end of the story. Again, his willingness to help with the farm extends to his separation from the life of a soldier, which comes to a poetic end in this quest's final cutscene. After Kite and the rest of the group fight off the monsters, they realize that the crops have been mostly destroyed. Or at least so they thought. Juniper shows up and tells them that they're all dumb as bricks, and that potatoes grow in the ground, so all their food is actually fine. Kite then sincerely apologizes to Juniper, and to show Zeon's improved communication skills, he consoles Kite and directly tells him how much of an asset he is to the team. I love that the farm finally yielding good results coincides with Zeon, Kite, and Juniper finally seeing each other not as enemies or commanders or soldiers, but instead as people and as friends. It feels like a great final step in moving away from the war, and having these Spongy Spuds be at the center of it all ties back into that one comparison Zeon made right at the very beginning. Because this whole time, the farm was Zeon's way of making amends for the world's cruel faults. Finally, Noah comments on how happy they all look being able to talk to each other and celebrate the food stress-free, which then beautifully fades into the quest complete icon, showing the ever so fitting title, Reasons to Evolve. The last thing I want to bring up is simply how much I love the inclusion of Juniper and Colony Tau in this story. It's one of the only quests in the game where you get to see two heroes interact, which in this case adds a lot to the topic of community, which is so prevalent here. On top of this, Zeon and Juniper's stories almost perfectly parallel each other. Colony 9 having a large soldier population, but a lack of food and resources, pairing with Colony Tau, which is detached from the rest of the world, but abundant in food and natural life, allows them to work together and perfectly showcase the benefits of meeting completely new people and learning from them. Sort of like I was saying earlier, the game as a whole does a great job at showing the characters relatively simple parts of life and emphasizing the importance and beauty of it. I think Zeon and Juniper meeting each other is the best example of this outside the main story. Taking two established characters and having them show immense kindness and understanding to one another, despite being former enemies, and allowing them to grow this new relationship of trust, friendship, and mutual passion for a certain craft. As corny as it might sound, I think it just shows how beautiful friendship can be, even if it's between you and someone completely unexpected. And on top of all that, it highlights how these two characters have grown independently from their respective first quests. Juniper coming from a secluded location, finally being able to talk to and meet new people, and Zeon being free to be his true friendly self now that he doesn't have to worry about who his enemies may or may not be. This is how life is supposed to be. Not fighting wars for faceless people and a pointless cause, but instead by loving and growing with the friends that have chosen to support you in their life. If you've made it this far in the video, I really appreciate it. I feel like I could go on for hours. There's truly so much to this one quest line alone. I didn't even touch on the smaller quests you can complete afterwards, but seeing as this video is already pretty long, I think I'll end it here with one of the final scenes in Zeon's second quest, as I feel like it sums up a good chunk of the messages told across this entire story. Thanks so much for watching, and make sure to try something new every once in a while. You never know who you might meet, or how you might change yourself for the better. Peace.
And then we hope for rain.
What's wrong?
Oh, I was just thinking how times change. It wasn't so long ago that my sole thoughts were about keeping the flame clock topped up. Now here I am, worrying about soil and potatoes, looking up at the sky. I could never have imagined myself in such a position.
True. Who'd have thought you'd chomp on a raw potato or admit to lacking a spine?
Please, don't remind me. I feel flushed just thinking about it.
But I think we've grown a lot closer as a result. I feel like I know you better. Sometimes you don't really get to know someone until you've clashed first and then sorted out your differences.
You don't beat around the bush, do you?
Anyway, I think we've done what we can here. Let's report back into Juniper.
Rejoice! This soil should be perfect for spongy spuds.